Okay, chapter 6. Can you believe it? How dare she? Chaya paced the workshop. Her throat felt tight as she pummeled her thighs with her fists. What a nightmare! Where on earth were the jewels? Neil slumped at his work table, his forehead resting on his hands. It was a good thing Hugh the carpenter, wasn't in again. Neil wasn't even bothering with his work today. Maybe, he said, his voice muffled as he looked down at the table. Maybe they're safe now that they're with her. Safe? Maybe the jewels are safe. But what about the people? It's so awful, Neil. Chaya flopped against the half-built wardrobe, the shelves digging into her back. General Sirius still harassing the villagers. He won't give up. He wants a confession. Neil fingered the note. I don't understand why she's taken them. Her father is Cassim the merchant. They're rich, aren't they? How did she find out how to open it in one night? Said Chaya, stalking around the workshop. How did she even work out there was a secret compartment? Ridiculous. She can't be that clever. Thinks she can outwit us? No way. Neil shook his head. It doesn't matter. She must have guessed something was up from the way we were acting. And she did say the box felt heavy. The question is, what do we do now? We've got to. Chaya's mouth dropped open as she saw a slim figure dressed in red walking through the paddy fields towards them. All of the nerve. Neil, she said, her eyes on the figure. Neil, it's her. Neil's head whipped up. Nawa stepped gingerly through the fields, her eyes on the ground. She came into the workshop and stopped in front of them, her hands on her hips. Where is my box? She said. I want it back. Where are the jewels? Said Chaya, leaning over the table. Thief! Chaya, began Neil. Nawa laughed. May I remind you that it wasn't me who broke into somebody's house and stole things? That's different, said Chaya. I was taking back what was ours. Neil held up his hands. Listen, ours? Nawa snorted. Really? I bet the king would beg to differ. There was a silence in the workshop. She knew. Nawa knew everything. Miss Nawa, Neil stood up. Please, it's not how you think. We need the jewels because of what General Siri's doing to the villagers. We have to give them back and save our people. That's not the only reason, snapped Chaya. We also want them because they're ours, not hers. She glared at Nawa before turning back to Neil. And stop calling her Miss. She's not better than you in any way. Chaya, be quiet. I'm sure we can discuss this calm. She should have just stayed out of it, said Chaya, jabbing her finger at Nawa. The girl had put them all in danger with the silliness, poking her nose into other people's business, taking what's not hers. Hey! Nawa threw up her hands. I bought the box. Well, the price didn't include the jewels, said Chaya, so you can't have them. Who said I wanted them? Nawa looked scornful. I only want my box, not the Queen's jewels. I'm not a thief. She took a drawstring bag out of her pocket and flung it on the table, which is more than I can say for the pair of you. Chaya stared at the little bag. Neil snatched it up and pulled it open. The sound of jewels clinking together made Chaya's heart soar. Thank you so much, Miss Nawa. Thank you for understanding, said Neil. Neil, she's not doing us a favour. The jewels aren't hers to give away. Of course I'm doing you a favour, said Nawa. I mean, I could tell my father if you like. Oh no, Miss Nawa, please don't do that, said Neil. I'll make sure I get you back your box. Actually, he went up from the shelves and moved some trinkets to the front. Please choose any one you want, or 2, 3, whatever. Nawa stepped around the work table to the shelves. Chaya marched after her. Wait a minute, wait a minute. Neil, what's this about 2 or 3? Neil closed his eyes. Chaya, I'm begging you. But then you'll have to pay your master with your wages, and it is he who pays so little. Nawa ignored them and rummaged on the shelves. Stop it! Neil hissed at Chaya. We've got the jewels. Don't ruin it now. Someone cleared their throat behind them. Chaya turned around to see two men had walked into the workshop. They were dressed in identical guard uniforms, and they stamped their shoes on the coir rug, looking around with interest. Behind them, some more people followed through the fields, and in the distance beyond the paddy fields, Chaya could see a group of riders on horseback. The ground listed under her feet as a wave of dizziness swept through her. It was the king's men. We're just searching the area, said one of the guards who'd come in, nodding respectfully at Chaya and Noah. If you two will wait outside. Hey, said the other to Neil. You boy, what's that you hid on the shelf there? Nothing, said Chaya. He works here. His master Kumar, the carpenter, is away. You should come back another time. Some of the rest of the group approached the workshop. Get General Siri, said the man who shouted at Neil. Something's going on here. There was a sudden rush of movement. Chaya swung round. 4 men surrounded Neil, and one was rummaging around on the shelf. Noah stepped forward and tried to say something, but froze as the man swept his spear back and forth along the wooden knickknacks, knocking things over and sending them crashing to the floor. Stop it! Shouted Chaya, but her voice was drowned out by the clatter of falling wood as item after item of Neil's hard work smashed on the floor. A swarm of the king's men crowded around the workshop, almost blocking out the light. Soon General Siri himself was at the doorstep, one corner of his lip pinned back in a permanent sneer. What do we have here? His voice was hoarse and broken. The carpenter's away, said Chaya. You should come back when he's in. Your men have done enough damage here. General Siri's eyes swept around the workshop. I don't think so. We'll continue to search it now. But the owner isn't in. Chaya stepped up to the doorway and blocked the entrance. I insist that you come back another time. General Siri laughed indulgently. Whoever you are, miss, out of the way now. General Siri, said a voice behind Chaya. Sir, the boy hid something as we came in. We found it. Chaya turned to see a man hold out Noir's drawstring bag. General Siri took it out in his dry, cracked hands, and fear slashed deep into Chaya's heart. Chapter 7. Let him go. It wasn't him, said Chaya, as the guards seized Neil. Someone shoved her against the wall as the men pushed past, dragging Neil through the doorway. Well, well, General Siri slapped Neil on the back of his head. So we found you at last. Trust me, boy, it's over for you. The king's men crowded around them, and Chaya lost sight of Neil. She scrambled up the half wall and jumped over, following the glimpse of his pastel blue shirt as he was taken away in the surge of men. Wait! She screamed. It wasn't him, wait! A guard grabbed her and pulled her away. Stay out of this, miss. Chaya struggled against him, her hair catching in his copper buttons. Let me go! Chaya hit out at the guard. She heard the crack of a bone on bone and saw blood pool on his lips, leaving her knuckles stinging. She slipped out of his grasp and ran towards the front, fighting her way through the throng of men. It wasn't him! It was me! Chaya screams burned her throat, but no one took any notice. She saw 2 men at the front hall kneel into the cart. Bodies hit against her, buffeting from side to side, and her ears rang with the whinnying of horses and crunch of cartwheels. Something scraped against her arm, leaving a slash of blood. She thrust her way to the front, where the purple waistcoat of General Siri flashed golden at the seams, sitting high on his horse. Chaya threw herself in front of him, blocking the way. The horse reared up and General Siri gaped down at her. What the? Get out of the way before you get killed, idiot! It was me! Yelled Chaya. I stole the jewels. It wasn't Neil. General Siri looked confusedly at the deputy next to him. The man shook his head. It's Headman Sarath's daughter. She's friends with the boy. Her father lets her mix with all sorts. He spat on the ground. Get out, said General Sirith Chaya. A guard pulled her off the path, grabbing her by the neckline of her dress, the cloth cutting into her neck. No, wait! The words stuck in her throat. Her palms slammed into gravel as he pushed her by the wayside, and the sounds rolled away. Please, she screamed again. He didn't do it. It was me. She scrabbled up and dusted her sandy, bloody hands. But by then the whole convoy was disappearing into the distance. Chaya trudged back to the workshop and sat on Neil's empty stool. She put her head down on his work table and punched the surface. Tears spilled down her face and darkened the partly carved lotuses he'd been working on. She had to pull herself together. There was no time to waste. She was the one who got Neil into this, and it was up to her to fix things. She looked up and dried her eyes. There was a movement in the corner of the workshop. Now was standing by the far wall. What on earth? Chaya glared at her. I'm sorry about what happened, said Nawa. Go away, said Chaya. You shouldn't be here. You tried to take the blame. Naya seemed to consider Chaya, her head cocked to one side. I am to blame. Chaya got up and paced the room. She had to help Neil. What could she do? Why did you do it? Said Nawa. Do what? Would you just leave? I don't have time for this right now. But Nawa stayed where she was, staring outside as if deep in thought. She said, turning to Chaya briefly. You know the consequences of being caught. Why did you do it, even if it was true? Because Neil is my friend. Is that so hard to understand? Nawa stared at Chaya for a few moments before turning back to the outside again. Chaya picked up Neil's carving tools that had been scattered on the floor when he was dragged out. She felt Nawa's eyes on her as she wrapped them in a rag and dropped them into her pocket. Where are the young? Asked Nawa as Chaya made for the outside. Chaya ignored her. Wait! Nawa hurried up behind. Aren't you going to help your friend? Chaya turned her sharply. Of course I am. How? Nawa ran beside Chaya, struggling to keep up the narrow path without stumbling into the paddy field. How will you help him? By doing what I do best. And what's that? Breaking into places and making off with stuff, said Chaya, and strode away as Nawa stared after her in surprise.